a royal salute to Princess Anne on her birth. The day began not with fanfare, but with a sense of gentle anticipation, a kind of quiet excitement that only came once a year. Though the world outside might have been unaware of the small, subtle rhythms of the royal household at that early hour, inside, the palace moved with precision and care, preparing for a day dedicated to celebrating one of Britain's most respected royals. In the servants' quarters and behind the polished doors of the corridors, staff were already on their feet. Housekeepers moved with practiced efficiency, carrying trays of freshly polished silverware, soft linens, and carefully arranged bouquets of flowers. The flowers themselves had been chosen with care, many ordered from the royal gardens and others sourced from local florists, reflecting Princess Anne's preference for natural beauty rather than extravagant decoration. Roses, lilies, and hydrangeas were meticulously arranged in crystal vases, their colors soft and elegant, a quiet celebration of nature's charm. Every detail mattered, from the placement of the silver candlesticks to the precise folding of napkins, because in the palace, nothing was left to chance. Meanwhile, in her private chambers, Princess Anne was beginning her day in her usual way, with quiet reflection and a walk. The princess had always valued routine and discipline, a trait she had carried throughout her life. She dressed simply but elegantly, favoring practical clothing that allowed her freedom of movement, rather than showy outfits designed for attention. Her hair, always neatly tied back, framed a face marked by both wisdom and warmth. Despite the significance of the day, she moved calmly, with no hint of urgency, embodying the poise that had defined her public life. The gardens of the palace stretched out before her, serene and meticulously cared for. Early morning mist hovered over the manicured lawns, curling around hedges trimmed into precise shapes and meandering pathways lined with gravel. The soft chirping of birds provided a gentle soundtrack as Princess Anne walked slowly along her usual route. She paused occasionally, bending to admire a particularly vibrant rose or watching the dewdrops glisten on the petals of lilies. These moments of quiet reflection, away from the public eye, were precious to her. They allowed her to connect with the simple beauty of life, grounding herself in nature before the day's events began. Even though the day was meant to celebrate her, Princess Anne never sought attention. Her sense of duty always came first. She thought briefly of the engagements she had in the past year: visits to hospitals, meetings with charitable organizations, and support for causes close to her heart. Each engagement had been an opportunity to give back, to make a difference, no matter how small. Her mind lingered on the children she had met, the veterans she had spoken to, and the countless ordinary citizens whose lives had been touched in some way by her presence. These memories brought a quiet satisfaction, a reminder that service rather than recognition was her true reward. Outside the palace walls, London was beginning to stir. The city's streets were filling slowly with people heading to work, their footsteps echoing against the cobblestones and pavements. But near the palace gates, there was already a sense of something special in the air. A few early visitors had come, eager to catch a glimpse of the royal family and to offer birthday greetings. Some carried small flags, others had handwritten cards or bouquets, simple tokens of respect and admiration. These early arrivals moved quietly, careful not to disturb the routines of the palace staff, yet their presence hinted at the larger celebrations to come later in the day. Back inside, the palace kitchens were a flurry of activity. Chefs, dressed in crisp white uniforms, were busy preparing a special breakfast for the princess and the household staff. The aroma of freshly baked bread, brewed coffee, and delicate pastries filled the corridors. Each dish was prepared with care, using the finest ingredients, and presented in a way that reflected both elegance and comfort. Princess Anne valued good food, not for luxury, but for its ability to bring people together and mark important moments in life. The breakfast that morning was simple yet refined, a reflection of her personality, understated, thoughtful, and entirely focused on the needs of those present rather than personal indulgence. Even the animals in the palace grounds seemed to sense that the day was different. Horses in the stables neighed softly, and the stable hands moved quietly, brushing their coats and checking their feed. Princess Anne had always loved horses, dedicating much of her life to equestrian pursuits. Though her schedule was filled with official duties, she made time for riding and caring for her animals. finding in them a rare form of companionship and calm. On her birthday, she allowed herself a few extra moments in the stables, greeting each horse individually and speaking to them in the gentle, reassuring tone that only she could command. By mid-morning, the palace was fully awake. Staff moved through the halls with quiet efficiency, carrying trays and bouquets, adjusting decorations, and ensuring that everything was ready for the arrival of close family members and official guests later in the day. The atmosphere was one of calm diligence rather than noisy celebration. Each person knew their role and performed it with respect and care, understanding that a royal birthday, particularly one for Princess Anne, was as much about dignity and grace as it was about festivity. Princess Anne herself spent this time reflecting on the meaning of the day. Birthdays, she knew, were a private matter, even for someone in the public eye. They were moments to pause, to consider the past, and to look forward to the future. She thought of the challenges she had faced over the years, the moments of joy and the moments of sorrow, and the ways in which her role had shaped her life. Through it all, she had remained steadfast, guided by a sense of duty that had never wavered. Today, as she walked through the quiet halls and gardens of her home, she felt a sense of calm pride, not in herself, but in the life she had dedicated to service. As the morning progressed, a few personal letters and messages began to arrive. Some were from close friends, others from charitable organizations, and a few from family members who had traveled from afar. Each note was read with care, a small smile or thoughtful nod acknowledging the sentiments within. Princess Anne appreciated these gestures not for their grandeur, but for their thoughtfulness. They were reminders of the connections she had nurtured throughout her life, and the trust and respect she had earned through years of quiet dedication. By the time the clock neared noon, the palace had transformed into a space ready for celebration, though still maintaining the subtle elegance that Princess Anne preferred. Flowers were perfectly arranged, silverware gleamed in the morning light, and every detail reflected a quiet, dignified joy. Staff paused briefly, exchanging satisfied glances, knowing that the first part of the day had been executed flawlessly. Outside, the city of London continued its rhythm, but within the palace walls, a gentle hush had fallen, signaling that the day's true celebration was only beginning. Princess Anne, now returning from her morning walk, paused at a window overlooking the gardens. The dewdrops on the petals sparkled in the morning sun, and she allowed herself a quiet moment to breathe it all in. This, she thought, was what made life meaningful. Not the pomp or recognition, but the small, beautiful details, the moments of reflection, and the steady work of serving others. Her birthday, though marked by official ceremonies later, had begun in exactly the way she would have wished, calm, thoughtful, and full of subtle joy. In the palace, everyone sensed it. The day was special, but it would be a celebration defined not by extravagance, but by respect, dedication, and heartfelt acknowledgement. And as Princess Anne moved through the halls, exchanging brief words with staff and pausing to admire the preparations, she embodied the quiet dignity that had defined her life. For those who worked alongside her, it was a reminder that true celebration did not always need loud fanfare. Sometimes it was found in the gentle rhythm of a morning done well, in the beauty of flowers, the sound of horses, and the quiet satisfaction of a life devoted to service. By the time the palace was fully prepared for the public and private celebrations later in the day, Princess Anne had completed her morning routine with calm composure. She had walked through gardens, greeted staff and animals, reflected on her past, and enjoyed the quiet joys of the morning. The palace, in all its grandeur, felt more like home than ever before, a place where careful preparation met deep personal reflection, and where every small detail was a testament to a life lived with care, discipline, and kindness. And so, as the morning drew to a close, a soft sense of anticipation filled the air. The first part of Princess Anne's birthday was over, but it had already been a celebration in its own quiet way, full of thoughtfulness, calm energy, and the understated elegance that was her hallmark. The palace seemed to breathe with her, readying itself for the next steps of the day, as the princess herself paused for one last look at the sunlit gardens. For her, the day had begun perfectly, a gentle and meaningful start to a birthday that promised to honor both her public service and the quiet grace that defined her life. By midday, the world outside the palace had begun to take notice. Though Princess Anne was known for her modesty and preference for a quiet life, her birthday had always drawn attention from people across the United Kingdom and the wider Commonwealth. London streets, usually busy with the rush of everyday life, now carried a subtle sense of excitement. People paused as they passed the palace gates, noticing the small clusters of well-wishers who had gathered early in the day. Some carried handwritten cards with neat messages of respect and admiration, while others held small flags or tiny bouquets of flowers, tokens of appreciation for a royal who had long dedicated her life to service. The first visitors were mostly ordinary citizens, people who had taken time off from work or traveled from nearby towns to catch a glimpse of the princess. Many arrived quietly, careful not to disturb the palace staff who were busy with preparations. Children stood on tiptoe to see through the iron gates, their eyes wide with curiosity. Some waved shyly when a passing member of the royal staff gave them a polite nod. Parents smiled, capturing the moments on their phones, hoping to remember the morning when the city itself seemed to pause for Princess Anne's birthday. The air outside was crisp and fresh, a soft breeze rustling the flags and banners held by those waiting. Though there was no official parade or fanfare yet, the atmosphere carried its own quiet excitement. Stories of Princess Anne's life and dedication were shared among the crowd. Some spoke of her charity work, others of her support for the equestrian community, and many praised her ability to balance public duty with personal integrity. In every conversation, there was a sense of deep respect, a recognition that this royal, unlike many others, had devoted her life to meaningful service rather than spectacle. Inside the palace, the preparations for the official birthday acknowledgements continued in earnest. The staff had transformed the Grand Hall into a space of understated elegance. The polished floors reflected the soft sunlight streaming in through the tall windows, and the floral arrangements were placed with precision, each one chosen to complement the architecture and the natural beauty of the palace. Servants moved quietly but efficiently, checking every detail, from the arrangement of chairs to the lighting, ensuring that the hall would be perfect when the official guests arrived. Princess Anne, meanwhile, spent a quiet moment in her private sitting room, reading some of the early letters and messages that had arrived that morning. She was particularly touched by notes from children and young people who had benefited from the charitable organizations she supported. Their letters were full of hope and gratitude, written in simple, honest language that moved even someone as composed as the princess. She read each one carefully, sometimes pausing to smile or nod, feeling a deep connection with the lives she had touched over the years. These letters, more than any ceremonial recognition, reminded her why she had dedicated herself to public service from an early age. Around the palace, the security staff and palace officers coordinated with quiet professionalism. They ensured that everyone arriving outside the gates could safely observe the princess while maintaining the dignity of the event. Their presence was discreet yet reassuring, a reminder that even in moments of celebration, careful planning and protection were essential. Though the crowd was polite and excited, the officers moved with vigilance, ready to respond to any situation while allowing the day to unfold with grace. The morning had already been a reflection of Princess Anne's life, calm, disciplined, and full of purpose. But as midday approached, the public's presence added another layer to the day's significance. A few families had arrived from towns several miles away, making the trip early in the morning to ensure they could participate. Some had brought small gifts, handmade cards, or flowers picked from their own gardens. Though the gifts were modest, they carried with them genuine affection and respect, a testament to the princess's impact on people's lives. She had always valued sincerity over grandeur, and these humble tokens of appreciation reflected that principle perfectly. By this time, the television crews had begun to position themselves discreetly, capturing the scene for national coverage. The story of Princess Anne's birthday was not just about ceremony, it was about the connection she had with her people. Reporters spoke quietly with early visitors, asking them what Princess Anne meant to them. One young woman, holding a handmade card, explained that she admired the princess's dedication to children's charities. An elderly man spoke of the princess's visits to hospitals during his childhood, leaving a lasting impression of kindness and compassion. These moments highlighted the human side of royalty, showing that even in a world of tradition and protocol, genuine connections mattered most. Inside the palace, Princess Anne continued her routine with quiet focus. She met briefly with her private secretary and aides, discussing the schedule for the remainder of the day. Though she had performed countless public duties over the years, she remained involved in every detail, ensuring that the day would reflect both tradition and personal meaning. Her calm authority guided the staff as they prepared for the upcoming ceremonies, instilling confidence and a sense of purpose in everyone around her. The well-wishers outside the palace gates were patient, but their excitement grew as the hour of official acknowledgement drew nearer. They chatted quietly, sharing stories of past royal visits or memories of events in which Princess Anne had participated. Some spoke of her equestrian achievements, others of her charitable work, and many simply spoke of her reputation for integrity and dedication. There was a sense of shared admiration, a feeling that they were part of something larger than themselves, a moment in which history, tradition, and personal respect converged. Back inside, the palace kitchens were already preparing for the next stage of the day. The chefs worked with care to prepare meals and refreshments for the official guests who would soon arrive. Every dish was chosen to reflect the elegance and refinement expected in a royal setting, yet each was prepared with an eye toward comfort and enjoyment. Princess Anne, who valued practicality, appreciated the thoughtfulness behind the arrangements. She knew that every meal, every detail, contributed to the sense of hospitality and respect that defined the royal household. By early afternoon, the palace grounds had become a subtle but vibrant stage for celebration. Children pressed their faces against the gates, waving tiny flags, while adults exchanged greetings and shared their excitement. The breeze carried the scent of flowers from the palace gardens, mixing with the sounds of birds and the soft footsteps of visitors moving through the area. It was a scene that balanced quiet dignity with genuine public enthusiasm, reflecting the unique way in which Princess Anne's life and work were celebrated by her people. Princess Anne herself stepped onto a balcony briefly, acknowledging the crowd with a small, graceful wave. There was no exaggerated ceremony, no loud proclamation, just a simple gesture delivered with warmth and respect. The crowd responded with quiet applause, cheers, and smiles, a heartfelt acknowledgement of her dedication and presence. The moment was brief, but it captured the essence of her relationship with the public, respectful, sincere, and grounded in genuine admiration rather than spectacle. After returning inside, Princess Anne spent a few moments reviewing upcoming engagements and letters. Her attention to detail and sense of responsibility had always been remarkable. Even on her birthday, she remained focused on her duties and commitments, balancing personal reflection with public acknowledgement. The letters from citizens, reports from her staff, and updates on charitable organizations were not distractions, but part of the life she had chosen, a life defined by service, compassion, and careful attention to the needs of others. The afternoon unfolded slowly but meaningfully. The crowd outside remained patient, sharing stories and observing the palace grounds with quiet interest. Some visitors had traveled for hours to be present, and their dedication reflected the respect in which Princess Anne was held. For many, this birthday was not simply a ceremonial event, but a moment to honor a person whose life had been dedicated to the well-being of others. Children waved, parents smiled, and the community felt connected to a larger story of public service and personal integrity. By the time the official visitors began to arrive, the palace was a place of understated grandeur, prepared to welcome family, dignitaries, and close friends. Yet even as formalities approached, the public's quiet presence continued to be felt. Their respect, patience, and genuine affection created an atmosphere that complemented the elegance of the palace with warmth and human connection. Princess Anne, though not one to seek attention, understood the importance of this acknowledgement. It was a reminder that her life of service had left a meaningful impact, not only on institutions, but on the hearts of ordinary people. As the sun moved higher in the sky, casting golden light across the palace gardens and grounds, the first part of the day's public acknowledgement reached its subtle climax. Princess Anne moved through the palace corridors with calm composure, aware that every moment, no matter how small, carried significance. The quiet admiration of citizens, the thoughtful gestures of flowers and letters, and the polite, respectful presence of the crowd all contributed to a celebration that was both dignified and deeply human. In these moments, it became clear that Princess Anne's birthday was not just about recognition, it was about connection. It was about the ways in which her life of dedication had touched countless people, from children and veterans to ordinary citizens who admired her sense of duty and integrity. The celebrations, both inside and outside the palace, reflected a life well lived, a life in which personal values and public service were seamlessly intertwined. By the end of the afternoon, the first stage of public acknowledgement was complete. The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving behind a sense of quiet satisfaction and shared respect. Inside the palace, staff and family members prepared for the next part of the day's events, confident that the morning and midday had honored Princess Anne in a way that reflected her values, with dignity, sincerity, and thoughtfulness. Princess Anne herself paused for a brief moment of reflection. The morning had been calm, disciplined, and quietly celebratory. The midday had brought connection with the public and acknowledgement of a life dedicated to service. She felt a sense of quiet fulfillment, knowing that her work and dedication had touched lives in meaningful ways. The official ceremonies would come next, but the true significance of the day had already been realized in these moments of human connection, respect, and gratitude. By early afternoon, the palace had transformed into a space of poised elegance, prepared to host the official celebrations for Princess Anne's birthday. Though the morning had been quiet and reflective, the arrival of guests signaled a shift toward formal acknowledgement. The staff moved with precision, checking floral arrangements, adjusting polished silverware, and ensuring that every detail reflected the understated dignity expected for such an occasion. From the grand hall to the smaller reception rooms, every corner of the palace radiated careful preparation, a subtle reminder of the discipline and respect that had long characterized Princess Anne's life. Princess Anne herself was ready, dressed in a tailored outfit that balanced elegance and practicality. Her hair was neatly styled, and she wore a subtle brooch that carried personal meaning, a small touch that reflected her attention to detail. Though birthdays were usually private, she understood that the presence of dignitaries, family, and members of the royal household required grace, composure, and a quiet attentiveness to tradition. For her, this was not a moment of self-celebration, but an opportunity to honor the people who had contributed to her life, her work, and the many causes she supported. The first guests arrived, moving through the palace corridors with polite anticipation. Military officers in crisp uniforms, representatives from charitable organizations, and close family members all entered with measured steps, aware of the significance of the day. There was a gentle hum of conversation as greetings were exchanged, polite smiles shared, and the subtle etiquette of the palace observed. Each guest carried with them a sense of respect, not simply for a royal title, but for the decades of service and dedication that Princess Anne had demonstrated in her public life. A regiment of officers was positioned in the palace courtyard, standing in precise formation. Their movements were synchronized, reflecting rigorous training and the ceremonial discipline expected of the royal household. When Princess Anne entered the hall, the officers performed a crisp salute, the sound of polished boots striking the marble floor echoing softly through the corridors. The moment was ceremonial but also deeply symbolic, a recognition of her lifelong connection to service, the military, and the nation she represented with dignity and commitment. Inside the grand hall, the atmosphere was both formal and welcoming. Elegant floral arrangements adorned the tables, and the sunlight streaming through the tall windows highlighted the intricate designs of the palace interior. Staff members moved unobtrusively, ensuring that everything remained in order while guests found their places. The hall, in all its grandeur, seemed to pause for a brief moment as Princess Anne stepped forward, her presence commanding quiet attention without demanding it. She moved with the poise that had been honed through years of public life, exchanging nods and smiles with dignitaries and family members alike. The official speeches began with measured grace. Senior members of the royal household and close aides spoke briefly, highlighting Princess Anne's dedication to public service, her charitable contributions, and the integrity with which she conducted her life. Each word was chosen carefully, reflecting both the formality of the occasion and the deep respect in which she was held. When Princess Anne listened, she did so with quiet attentiveness, acknowledging the tributes with subtle nods and composed smiles, demonstrating a humility that had long distinguished her public image. A series of awards and recognitions followed, each one representing a facet of her contributions. Military honors, commemorations from charitable organizations, and acknowledgments from civic leaders were presented with careful ceremony. Princess Anne received each with grace, her expressions conveying gratitude without ostentation. She offered brief words of thanks, her voice steady and calm, acknowledging not only the recognition itself, but also the individuals and communities behind each tribute. In these moments, the focus was never on her as an individual, but on the shared values, efforts, and causes that had defined her life. One of the most striking moments of the ceremony came when a group of young people associated with one of the charities she supported presented her with handmade gifts. Small, thoughtful tokens, each carefully crafted, reflected the creativity and appreciation of the children. Princess Anne accepted these with gentle warmth, kneeling slightly to speak with the youngest contributors, asking them about their work and listening intently to their stories. Her attention to detail, patience, and genuine interest in their efforts highlighted her lifelong commitment to encouraging and inspiring the next generation. Outside the palace, preparations for the flypast were underway. The Royal Air Force had arranged for a brief display in honor of the princess, and spectators gathered at a distance to witness the aerial salute. Though Princess Anne preferred subtle celebrations, she recognized the significance of the flypast as a symbolic gesture of national appreciation. When the planes appeared in the sky, flying in precise formation, the crowd responded with quiet applause. The sight was both beautiful and meaningful, a reminder of the respect that extended beyond the palace walls to the nation itself. Back inside, family members shared small moments of personal connection amid the formalities. Brief conversations, shared smiles, and quiet laughter added warmth to the proceedings. Princess Anne's children and close relatives offered gentle words of congratulations, their presence providing a comforting balance to the ceremonial atmosphere. These private interactions, though understated, carried deep significance. They reflected the ways in which personal bonds could coexist with public duty, providing grounding and emotional support amid a life filled with responsibility. Throughout the ceremonies, Princess Anne maintained her signature composure. Her expressions were calm, her movements deliberate, and her engagement genuine. Guests noticed not only her elegance but also her attentiveness, how she listened to each speaker, how she engaged with each visitor, and how she acknowledged every gesture of respect. It was a demonstration of leadership through presence and action rather than words alone, a quality that had earned her admiration throughout her life. The ceremonies continued with a musical tribute. A small ensemble of musicians played selections that had special meaning to the princess, combining both traditional and contemporary compositions. The music filled the hall, creating an atmosphere of reverence and celebration simultaneously. Princess Anne allowed herself a quiet moment to appreciate the melodies, reflecting on the symbolism behind the music and the effort of those who had prepared it. It was a reminder that celebration could be both solemn and joyful, a balance that had long characterized her approach to life and public service. As the afternoon progressed, the focus shifted to the formal presentations of commemorative gifts. Representatives from various organizations presented Princess Anne with plaques, certificates, and tokens recognizing her efforts in education, healthcare, and community development. Each presentation was accompanied by polite remarks, emphasizing the impact of her involvement rather than personal accolades. Princess Anne received them with her customary grace, offering words of encouragement and appreciation to those who had contributed to the initiatives. She often turned the conversation back to the work itself, underscoring that recognition was secondary to the meaningful results of collective effort. One memorable moment occurred when a group of veterans entered the hall. They had met Princess Anne on numerous occasions in the past, and their presence brought a sense of continuity and respect to the ceremony. Each veteran spoke briefly about her support and dedication, and she responded with quiet acknowledgement, shaking hands and exchanging thoughtful words. For Princess Anne, these interactions were deeply meaningful. They reminded her of the broader purpose behind her public duties and the importance of sustaining connections with those who had served the nation. The ceremony concluded with a final tribute from her closest advisors. A heartfelt speech acknowledged not only Princess Anne's accomplishments, but also her steadfast character, her humility, and the principles that had guided her throughout life. As the words settled in the hall, there was a moment of reflective silence, a pause that allowed everyone present to consider the significance of her contributions. Princess Anne, standing tall yet unassuming, absorbed the sentiment with quiet gratitude, her composed demeanor reflecting both humility and dignity. As the official portion of the day drew to a close, guests slowly began to depart, offering respectful nods and quiet words of appreciation. Princess Anne took a final moment to greet those remaining, her attention attentive and her presence warm. The palace, now slightly quieter, retained a sense of reverence from the afternoon's events. Though the formal ceremonies were ending, the day's celebrations were far from complete, as private moments with family and friends awaited. For Princess Anne, the afternoon had been more than a series of formalities. It had been an opportunity to witness the tangible results of her lifelong dedication. From charitable organizations to military representatives, from young contributors to longtime family friends, each interaction reflected the broader impact of her service. The ceremonies highlighted not only recognition, but also connection, between the princess and the people she had supported, between the royal household and the community, and between past accomplishments and future commitments. As evening approached, the palace began to transition from public celebration to private reflection. The staff worked quietly to restore order, ensuring that the rooms were ready for the next stage of the day. Princess Anne retreated briefly to her private chambers, reflecting on the formalities that had unfolded. The day had been filled with tributes, ceremonial honors, and symbolic gestures, yet it had retained a sense of authenticity, grounded in genuine respect rather than ostentation. For her, that authenticity was what mattered most, a celebration that honored the principles she had always held dear. By the time she appeared again, ready to greet family members and close friends for the more intimate portion of the birthday, Princess Anne carried with her a sense of calm fulfillment. The formal ceremonies had been conducted with precision and grace, and the acknowledgments she received had reflected the respect, admiration, and gratitude of those who valued her contributions. Though the afternoon had been structured and ceremonial, it had also been deeply personal, a reminder that public recognition and private meaning could coexist seamlessly in a life dedicated to service. The palace in all its elegance seemed to hum with the memory of the day's events. Every detail, from the polished floors to the carefully arranged flowers, was a testament not just to the staff's skill, but to the significance of Princess Anne's life and work. For the princess herself, the ceremonies had reinforced her understanding of duty, respect, and human connection. The day had honored her, yes, but it had also celebrated the causes, people, and values that had shaped her life. As the afternoon light faded and the shadows lengthened in the palace corridors, Princess Anne felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. The ceremonies had been conducted flawlessly, the tributes heartfelt, and the atmosphere dignified and respectful. For a woman who had long placed duty above personal recognition, this was the perfect acknowledgement, a day in which honor, tradition, and personal meaning converged, leaving her with a profound sense of fulfillment and quiet satisfaction. After the formal ceremonies concluded and the last of the official guests had departed, the palace gradually settled into a quieter, more intimate atmosphere. The bustle of staff attending to details, the crisp salutes, and the polite applause of the afternoon gave way to a sense of calm. The grandeur of the day remained, but it was no longer the focus. Now, the heart of Princess Anne's birthday lay not in formal recognition, but in the quiet moments she could share with those closest to her. Princess Anne moved through the palace corridors with her characteristic poise, acknowledging the staff with gentle nods and words of appreciation. Though she had spent the entire day engaging with dignitaries and members of the public, her demeanor remained composed and thoughtful. The princess had always valued discipline and structure, yet she also understood the importance of reflection. The transition from public celebration to private reflection allowed her to pause and consider the year that had passed, the people who had influenced her, and the responsibilities that lay ahead. Her children were the first to greet her in the private family quarters. Their presence brought a warm, personal dimension to a day that had so far been defined by ceremony. They approached with soft smiles and heartfelt words, expressing love and gratitude in ways that required no formal speech. For Princess Anne, these small gestures carried more meaning than any public tribute. The bonds she shared with her family were enduring, providing stability and joy amid the weight of public duty. She embraced each of them warmly, her expression softening in a way that few outside the family would ever witness. The conversation turned naturally to memories and shared experiences. Her children recounted moments from the past year, small triumphs, personal milestones, and humorous incidents that reminded her of the richness of daily life beyond ceremonial obligations. Princess Anne listened with interest, occasionally offering gentle laughter or a knowing comment. These interactions were a reminder that, despite the formal recognition of the morning and afternoon, life's true meaning often resided in the ordinary and personal moments that connected people to one another. In the sitting room, family photographs adorned the walls, a visual record of shared history and enduring bonds. Princess Anne paused to study a few of them, her thoughts drifting to the past. She reflected on childhood memories, on her own parents, and on the experiences that had shaped her values and sense of duty. Life in the public eye had always demanded composure, but in these quiet moments, she allowed herself to feel a deep sense of continuity and connection. The photographs were more than decoration. They were reminders of the people who had supported her, the lessons she had learned, and the legacy she hoped to leave behind. The afternoon provided time for conversations that were deeply personal, touching on topics that were rarely part of public life. Princess Anne spoke with her children and close relatives about aspirations, responsibilities, and the ways in which she hoped to guide the next generation. She emphasized the importance of integrity, compassion, and commitment, values she had lived by herself. These discussions were not lectures but gentle guidance, framed in stories and experiences that illustrated the lessons she had learned over a lifetime. Her family listened attentively, understanding that these moments were gifts of wisdom, offered with care and thoughtfulness. While the family shared stories and reflections, the staff ensured that the household ran smoothly. Quietly, they prepared tea and light refreshments, placing delicate sandwiches, pastries, and freshly brewed tea on a low table in the sitting room. The arrangements were simple yet elegant, reflecting Princess Anne's preference for understated hospitality over grandeur. She moved gracefully among her family and staff, expressing gratitude for the care and attention that allowed the day to proceed seamlessly. These gestures of mutual respect strengthened the sense of warmth and intimacy in the palace, balancing the formality of the earlier ceremonies. Later in the afternoon, Princess Anne retreated briefly to the palace gardens. The light had softened into a gentle amber as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the manicured lawns and flower beds. She walked along her favorite paths, pausing occasionally to admire the roses and lilies that flourished under the careful attention of the gardeners. These moments of solitude provided clarity and peace, allowing her to reflect on the past year with thoughtful introspection. She considered the challenges she had faced, the accomplishments she had achieved, and the areas in which she still sought to make a difference. The gardens, with their quiet beauty, served as a sanctuary, a space where the pressures of public life could recede, even if only for a brief time. As she returned indoors, Princess Anne's thoughts shifted to the personal meaning of birthdays. She had long understood that such days were not merely about recognition, gifts, or ceremonies. Rather, they were opportunities to reflect, to acknowledge personal growth, and to express gratitude for relationships and experiences. The letters she had received earlier in the day, the smiles of well-wishers, and the words of admiration from guests all carried significance. Yet it was the intimate moments with family that resonated most deeply. In these exchanges, she found a true celebration of life, a recognition of love, connection, and shared experience. Dinner was a quiet family affair, carefully prepared to be both delicious and comforting. The table was set with understated elegance, fine china, polished silver, and a few carefully selected floral arrangements. Conversation flowed naturally, touching on the events of the day, plans for the future, and personal stories that brought laughter and warmth. Princess Anne encouraged her children to speak openly, valuing their perspectives and insights. Though accustomed to formality and ceremony, she appreciated the informal rhythm of family life, the spontaneous laughter, the gentle teasing, and the shared memories that strengthened familial bonds. After dinner, the family moved to a sitting area for a more reflective part of the evening. Princess Anne encouraged her children to share stories of gratitude and accomplishments, fostering a sense of pride and humility simultaneously. She listened attentively, offering guidance when appropriate and celebrating their successes with heartfelt acknowledgement. These exchanges reinforced the values she had worked to instill: respect, responsibility, and compassion. For Princess Anne, these private moments were more significant than any public honor, serving as a reminder of the enduring importance of family and personal connection. As the evening continued, Princess Anne allowed herself a few minutes alone, seated near a window overlooking the palace grounds. The gardens were bathed in the soft glow of twilight, and the distant sounds of the city had quieted. In this solitude, she reflected on the balance of public and private life, the interplay of duty and personal fulfillment. She considered the year ahead, thinking about charitable initiatives, public engagements, and family priorities. Though her life had been marked by responsibility and service, she also recognized the importance of taking moments to pause, to reflect, and to find satisfaction in small but meaningful details. The arrival of personal gifts added another layer of warmth to the evening. Close friends and family had brought thoughtful tokens, some handmade, others carefully chosen to reflect shared experiences or meaningful memories. Princess Anne accepted each gift with gratitude, taking time to understand the thought behind it. She engaged in quiet conversation with the gift givers, asking questions and showing genuine interest. These gestures, though modest, carried immense significance. They were reminders of the relationships she had nurtured, the trust she had earned, and the mutual respect that defined her interactions. Later, the family gathered for a small, intimate celebration with a birthday cake. The moment was simple yet symbolic. Candles were lit, and wishes were exchanged in the soft glow of the room. Princess Anne's smile was gentle and sincere, reflecting the joy of being surrounded by loved ones. The act of celebrating with family, rather than in front of an audience, underscored her values: the importance of love, connection, and shared experiences over public attention. It was a private celebration that held more meaning than any public acknowledgement, emphasizing the emotional depth that marked her life. As the evening drew to a close, Princess Anne reflected on the entire day. From the quiet morning walk through the gardens to the public recognition and formal ceremonies, and finally to the intimate moments with her family, the birthday had encompassed both her public and private worlds. She felt a profound sense of fulfillment, not from accolades or attention, but from the relationships, service, and personal reflection that had shaped her life. The day had reminded her of the balance between duty and personal connection, between public recognition and private meaning. Before retiring for the night, Princess Anne spent a few moments writing personal notes of thanks to family members and close friends who had sent messages or visited during the day. Her handwriting was precise, each word chosen carefully. These notes were more than formalities. They were expressions of gratitude and acknowledgement, a way of reinforcing the personal connections that grounded her amid the duties and responsibilities of royal life. Writing them allowed her to pause, to reflect, and to give back in a small but meaningful way. Finally, as Princess Anne prepared for rest, she paused to look out over the palace grounds one last time. The gardens were quiet, bathed in the soft glow of evening. She thought of the year ahead, of the challenges and opportunities that awaited her, and of the people who depended on her guidance, support, and service. Though birthdays came once a year, the reflections, lessons, and connections they inspired lasted far longer. With a sense of quiet contentment, she turned away from the window, ready to end the day with gratitude and anticipation for the future. In the end, Princess Anne's birthday had been more than a celebration. It had been a journey through public acknowledgement, personal reflection, and family connection. It had reminded her of the meaning of service, the value of relationships, and the importance of quiet moments of introspection. Surrounded by the people she loved, supported by a dedicated household, and guided by the principles she had lived by, Princess Anne closed the day with calm fulfillment. The private moments of laughter, reflection, and connection were as significant, perhaps more so, than any ceremonial tribute, leaving her with a lasting sense of warmth and gratitude that would carry into the year ahead. As night fell over the palace, a serene quietness settled. Across the grand estate, the halls, which had echoed with the gentle chatter of family and staff throughout the day, were now calm. The soft lighting of ornate lamps cast a warm glow on the polished floors, highlighting the intricate details of the architecture. For Princess Anne, the day's celebrations were nearing their conclusion, and the stillness allowed her to reflect fully on the experiences, emotions, and interactions that had filled her birthday from morning to night. She moved through the corridors slowly, savoring the final moments of her birthday. Each step reminded her of the balance her life had always required, the careful navigation between public duty and personal fulfillment, between ceremonial responsibility and private reflection. Though the day had been filled with formality, recognition, and attention, it had also provided a space for quiet introspection. Princess Anne understood that the true significance of the day lay not in the honors or tributes, but in the deeper awareness of her life's purpose and the meaningful connections she had cultivated over the years. The palace staff, though tired from a long day of meticulous preparation and service, continued their quiet duties. They moved unobtrusively, ensuring that the household maintained its order and dignity. Princess Anne paused to acknowledge them with soft words of thanks, her voice calm yet sincere. She understood that the seamless flow of the day was possible only because of their dedication, attention to detail, and professionalism. To her, recognizing their efforts was as important as receiving recognition herself. These quiet exchanges highlighted the respect and mutual care that defined the relationships within the royal household. Outside, the palace gardens were bathed in the gentle glow of moonlight. The flowers, which had been so carefully tended throughout the day, appeared almost magical in the soft night air. Princess Anne stepped onto a balcony, gazing at the gardens below. She took a moment to breathe in the crisp night air, letting the beauty and serenity of the surroundings settle her thoughts. In these quiet moments, she considered the full scope of her life, her responsibilities, achievements, and the lessons she had learned. The moonlight on the petals, the soft rustle of leaves, and the distant sounds of the city created a perfect backdrop for reflection, a reminder that life's simplest details often held profound significance. Her thoughts naturally turned to the public engagements that had defined much of her life. She recalled the morning's walk through the gardens, the greetings of well-wishers outside the palace gates, and the formal ceremonies that had followed. Each interaction, each gesture of respect and admiration, reflected the impact she had made over the decades. While she did not seek praise, the acknowledgement from citizens, colleagues, and organizations offered a quiet reassurance that her efforts had been meaningful. These reflections were not about personal glory, but about understanding how a life of service could leave lasting, positive effects on others. Princess Anne also reflected on the personal interactions of the day, the laughter, conversations, and shared moments with her children and close family members. Those private experiences reminded her that the essence of life was not measured by public recognition alone, but by the depth of relationships, the quality of shared time, and the sincerity of connections. Each smile, gentle touch, or shared story carried significance beyond what ceremonies could convey. These personal moments provided balance, grounding her in values of love, empathy, and familial responsibility, which she held dear above all else. The evening's quiet provided an opportunity for her to think about the past year. She considered the challenges she had faced, the opportunities she had embraced, and the small victories that had marked her journey. Each charitable initiative, public engagement, and private interaction had contributed to a broader tapestry of service and responsibility. Princess Anne understood that her life's work was cumulative, built not on singular events, but on consistent, thoughtful actions taken over time. This awareness brought her a sense of satisfaction and calm, knowing that her efforts, however modest they might appear, had created meaningful change. In her private chambers, she took time to write personal reflections and notes of gratitude. Her handwriting was precise and careful, each word selected thoughtfully. She wrote to close friends, colleagues, and family members, expressing appreciation for their support, guidance, and companionship throughout the year. These notes were not ceremonial. They were intimate expressions of connection and acknowledgement. Writing allowed her to pause, articulate her feelings, and reinforce bonds that were vital to her well-being and the fulfillment of her duties. For Princess Anne, such gestures were as important as public recognition, for they strengthened the relationships that formed the foundation of her life. Later, she spent time reviewing plans and commitments for the coming year. While birthdays are often seen as moments of rest or indulgence, for Princess Anne, they were opportunities to reassess priorities, set intentions, and consider ways to improve her contributions to society. She reflected on ongoing charitable projects, upcoming public engagements, and personal goals. Each consideration was approached with calm diligence, a hallmark of her character. This reflection was not about pressure or obligation. Rather, it was about maintaining a sense of purpose and direction, ensuring that her actions continued to have meaning and positive impact. The family gathered briefly for a final toast, a quiet acknowledgement of the day and of shared life experiences. The moment was simple, intimate, and warm, emphasizing the importance of togetherness rather than grandeur. Princess Anne spoke softly, offering words of encouragement and gratitude. She highlighted the importance of unity, empathy, and support, values that had guided her life. Her family responded with sincere smiles and quiet nods, understanding that these moments, though brief, carried profound significance. They celebrated not only the day but also the continuity of love, respect, and shared purpose that bound them together. After the toast, Princess Anne took a moment to sit alone by the window once more. She gazed out at the moonlit palace grounds, thinking about the legacy of service she wished to uphold. Life, she reflected, was measured not by titles or public accolades, but by the positive influence one could have on others. The quiet achievements, small acts of kindness, and consistent dedication to meaningful causes formed a lasting imprint far more enduring than ceremony. In these moments, she felt a sense of calm satisfaction, recognizing that her life's work had been guided by integrity, empathy, and careful thought. As the night deepened, she thought about the people whose lives she had touched, both directly and indirectly. From the children supported by charitable programs to the veterans and citizens she had met over the years, Princess Anne considered the broader impact of her service. She understood that recognition was fleeting, but meaningful action created lasting change. These reflections reinforced her commitment to continue working with focus, compassion, and quiet determination. The day's events, though celebratory, served as a reminder of the responsibility she carried and the ways in which her life intersected with the lives of others. The palace itself seemed to echo this sense of calm and reflection. The grand hallways, still adorned with flowers and polished silverware, bore witness to the day's significance. The rooms where ceremonies had taken place now retained a quiet dignity, a subtle reminder of the blend of tradition and personal meaning that defined the day. Princess Anne moved through these spaces with mindfulness, appreciating both the work of the staff and the symbolic resonance of the environment. Everything, the architecture, the flowers, the careful arrangements, reflected respect, effort, and a shared understanding of importance. Before retiring, she spent a few moments in prayer and meditation, reflecting on gratitude, guidance, and hope for the year ahead. These private practices were essential to her sense of balance, providing clarity and strength. She acknowledged the blessings of family, the support of friends and colleagues, and the opportunity to contribute positively to the world around her. While public celebrations had recognized her achievements, these quiet personal rituals grounded her, connecting her to values and principles that had guided her throughout life. Finally, Princess Anne prepared for rest, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. The day had been rich with experiences, from the quiet morning walk to the public recognition, the ceremonial tributes, and the private family moments. Each segment had offered its own lessons, emotions, and reflections. She felt gratitude for the people who had shared in her birthday, for the well-wishers who had expressed admiration, and for the family members who had provided love and support. It was a day that honored both her public service and her personal life, striking a delicate balance between tradition and intimacy. As she lay down for the night, she allowed herself a final thought of anticipation. Birthdays were not merely markers of age. They were milestones, reminders to reflect, to appreciate, and to look forward with purpose. Princess Anne considered the year ahead with thoughtful optimism. She planned to continue her commitments to service, family, and personal growth. The experiences of the day reinforced her understanding of what truly mattered: integrity, compassion, meaningful relationships, and the steady pursuit of positive impact. In the quiet of her chambers, with the moon casting soft light across the room, Princess Anne felt a deep sense of peace. The celebrations had honored her in ways both public and personal, and she was reminded that true recognition was not about grandeur, but about sincerity, connection, and service. The day had ended as it had begun, with quiet dignity, thoughtful reflection, and a profound appreciation for life's meaningful moments. Princess Anne closed her eyes, carrying with her the warmth of family, the respect of her people, and the satisfaction of a life well lived. The palace, now silent, seemed to embrace her calm, offering a final reminder of the balance between duty and personal fulfillment. Her birthday had been a celebration of both accomplishment and reflection, and it concluded with a sense of quiet joy that would linger far beyond the day itself. And so, as the palace rested under the night sky, Princess Anne drifted into sleep with a heart full of gratitude, a mind focused on purpose, and a spirit renewed for the year to come. The day had been a true reflection of her life, grounded in service, enriched by personal connection, and illuminated by the quiet satisfaction of meaningful achievement.